Good morning. Welcome to the Point. This past week was very active when it came to battling the coronavirus. Here in the state of Michigan, Governor Whitmer says we are now flattening the curve, and that means that manufacturing can come back online incrementally, starting as early as Monday. Here was part of that announcement on Thursday.
This is truly good news for our state. It's a major step forward on our My Safe Start plan to re-engage our economy safely and responsibly. Manufacturing is about 19% of our economy, and we've already got 4 to 5% that is already engaged as essential. And so this is a sizable part of our economy, but it is an incremental step. Now, I know Michiganders are eager to get back to work, and our businesses are eager to start up again. I am too. But it's crucial that we stay smart. If you think you're experiencing symptoms, go home. One worker carrying this virus can infect 20 more, who can infect thousands more. We must stay smart. Nothing is more important than protecting you and your families.
On Thursday, the governor also announced that the stay-at-home order would be extended through May 28th. That coincides with her most recent emergency declaration. It was that declaration that led the Senate Majority Leader and the Speaker of the House to bring a lawsuit against the governor. I asked them both about what that means for future negotiations on important issues like the budget and their relationship overall. Senator Shirkey, I'll start with you. This entire effort to try to leverage some type of negotiation with the governor seems to be kind of the latest impasse. We can go all the way back to last year's budget. Do you and the legislature, particularly you, Senator, and then I'd like to hear from you, Mr. Speaker, have the kind of relationship with Governor Whitmer to be able to really deal with these weighty issues, including that big budget issue going forward? Seems like a lawsuit kind of suggests there's not much of a relationship there.
Well, I'll stipulate, Rick, that a lawsuit does have a muting effect on relationship, but I also will put as evidence that we've navigated a lot of complex issues in the last year and a half, and there's no reason why we can't do it going forward.
It kind of goes to the heart of the big, heavy lift that you all have from the legislature and the governor moving forward, not just with the pandemic, but also with the budget. And I just wonder about the state of the relationship between the individuals here, because a lawsuit is not generally a way people deal with good relationships.
You know, Rick, I think going to court was avoidable had we just all been at the same table and negotiated together like we've done in times past. Now, I've had a fine relationship with the governor since the beginning of this term, the same way I've had a fine relationship with the Senate Majority Leader. And I think it's incumbent on us as leaders to be at the table despite disagreements on one issue. And I'm not going to let disagreement on one issue stop me from working with the governor on another issue. It's important that we don't take these things personally in our positions. What us going to court is not about the governor's policies. Us going to court is not about the legislature's policies. Us going to court is about ensuring the people's voices from around the state are back at the table by their constitution being followed. That's what this is about. We have many other very important decisions coming up, and it's important that we work together on those. And I fully intend on doing that. And this is not going to stop me from working with anyone.
And that wasn't the only legal action announced this past week. Congressman Paul Mitchell from the 10th District filed a federal lawsuit against the governor. I spoke to him about the basis of that. Congressman, you're suing the governor in federal court over the stay-at-home orders under two provisions, Article 4, Section 4, I believe, in the 14th Amendment. Explain how this came about and what kind of a remedy you want.
Well, first we need to be clear. I'm suing as a private citizen, not as a member of Congress. No magic congressional powers been inferred. I'm suing because I believe that I'm asking the court to review the Emergency Powers Act, that 1945 law, its constitutionality, the constitutionality of the governor's use of it or application of that law, because I think there needs to be some balance between the state police powers controlling our lives, controlling what we do, and the individual constitutional rights. We have now an ongoing public health challenge we have to deal with for a long period of time. Our initial objective was to, you've heard it numerous times, flatten the curve, to not overwhelm the healthcare system. We achieved that. Admirably, we've achieved that. Now we need to move forward with properly moving on with our economy, our lives, the basic rights we have to living in this country, and not have it constrained by a single person's decision.
The governor's rationale for this is that if we open the economy up too soon or too quickly, that we could see a second wave, and that would create even more. Obviously, that's the public health issue, but even more economic strain on the economy. Do you think there is some logic to that as she tries to reopen Michigan's economy?
I think the thought process that's going on there is when we reopen, everyone's going to go back to business as usual. There's an assumption being made. There's a level of ignorance on the part of the population that I don't think is a reasonable assumption. I think it's unreasonable. In fact, I think most people have learned that social distancing, especially from people that you don't know, is because you don't know their health, makes sense. That in a crowded public place, using a mask. The businesses have learned to sanitize more thoroughly and more regularly. They've learned to protect their employees. They've got things to do all of that. But I don't think you're going to see a return to the old normal. I think we're going to see a new normal, and we need to proceed with doing that because the balance we have right now, the economic damage it's doing to families, and in some cases, literally the mental health damage it's doing to people in the state matters. It has having an important impact, and we can protect people. We can minimize exposure of those that are high risk to this COVID-19. And we now have an idea, much more better idea about that. They're older folks who in fact have a couple of pre-existing conditions, usually before they contract the virus. And that has pretty significant impacts. And recognize that we need to do everything we can do to minimize their exposure without putting us all in a bubble. I mean, that's what's currently going on. And those actions are unreasonable.
So let me be clear. You're talking about the constitutionality of this. You want the courts to look at it. If you had a outcome in mind, what do you want the courts to do? Do you want them to overturn this and to invalidate that law?
Yes, that would be the best. My outcome, my opinion, is to invalidate the 1945 law, invalidate the emergency powers that are being claimed under that, and the governor actually proceed with working with the other branch of government, in this case the legislature, on a rational plan to move forward. What's happened right now is we have one person, the governor, making all these decisions, including, frankly, changing the statute of limitations on various laws, changing the duration of various court orders. Her actions are replacing the state court system and the state legislature and putting all those powers in one person to make a decision. She's described her powers as literally, as recently as yesterday, as a dial that she can ratchet up or ratchet back depending on her assessment of the issues at place. The Emergency Powers Act, in my opinion, wasn't intended to do that. It was intended to provide ability to intervene in an emergency, address the emergency, and then move on. We're going to be dealing with the COVID-19 virus for an extended period of time. I do not believe we should have emergency powers for an extended period of time without the engagement of other elected leaders in that process. It is not intended to be a one-person show.
And there was more this week about the coronavirus pandemic. When we come back, we'll talk about a possible vaccine and what the U.S. Transportation Department is doing to keep the supply lines moving. That's all next. To the Point. Welcome back to the Point. There was more news this week about the COVID-19 outbreak and a possible vaccine, and that news came from Kalamazoo. We talked with State Senator Sean McCann, and he talked about in his district how the efforts to find a cure are in high gear. Senator, I want to start by talking about something that came out this past week that is important, very important, as we take a look at the pandemic response here in the state of Michigan. We know in the past that we've mobilized for any number of things, as we have during this pandemic, with making face shields and masks and PPEs and any number of things. But part of our heritage in the state, too, is having a really good base for folks who do pharmaceuticals. And I know in your district, there is a Pfizer facility that is working on, in early stages, we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, working on a potential vaccine. That's pretty important news, not just for your district, but for the entire state, country, and globe. Tell me what you can about the practice or the process that Pfizer is going through.
Yeah, so Kalamazoo County, home to Pfizer, and originally the Upjohn company from many years ago. That's sort of the roots of our community in a lot of ways in biotech, both with Stryker Instruments and Pfizer, formerly the Upjohn company, and that basis has deep roots here. It's served our community well, and having footprints in both Portage and Kalamazoo over decades. And now we see how critical this is with the announcement that they would be part of the facilities here in Kalamazoo and Portage would be part of the original ramping up for manufacturing of a vaccine, hopefully, should it be, brought to manufacturing levels. And so this has been identified as a key critical facility within Pfizer's infrastructure to ramp up quickly that manufacturing. And that would initially start here with, again, presuming something that is effective is discovered and tested and trialed. Would then be, quickly ramped up for manufacturing, and that's really what's exciting about this. Is, and somewhat risky, I think, on the part of the company that we should appreciate is that, they're ramping up manufacturing possibilities for something that they don't know for sure yet is going to come, but we all certainly hope will come. And once those ramp ups are completed, they'll be set to make millions of doses in 2020. And hundreds of millions of doses, company-wide, worldwide, in 2021.
Well, when you talk about that, that's a very good point, because there are two facets to that. One is, as a business model, having to ramp up for something that you can't predict, because the trials and all of the FDA approval that would have to be done all has to fall in line. And if any of that doesn't happen, then you don't have that production. But on the other hand, you kind of have to be ready and have people in place, because if you do have it, the demand is going to be overwhelming. So that's kind of a tight rope for them to walk, isn't it?
It is, and I can't obviously speak to all the particulars of that business and how it works, but I would hope that even if a vaccine comes from somewhere else, that's still something that nationally we put in essentially like a war effort to produce the millions of vaccines that the country and the world will need. So there's been other talk of other people working on this process, this project. It's clearly of critical national importance. So I imagine it would be still an all hands on deck, no matter sort of where the original vaccine comes from. And I would hope, again, not knowing exactly how that would work, that Pfizer would be a big part of that.
Senator, I want to talk to you about life as we know it today. I know you and the legislature have been in session very limitedly, but I also know you've been doing a lot of work in your district there to the degree that you can. Tell me what it's been like as a newly elected senator just a couple of years ago into this big pandemic response. What has it been like for you and working with your constituents?
Well, to some extent, I've likened it to work I used to do at the American Red Cross, and how I was a fundraiser for the American Red Cross. And so pretty much any time a large scale international or national disaster struck, everything gets dropped and it's all hands on deck. And it's a lot of people wanting to help out, and it's an all-consuming priority. And that's really what it's been for myself and my team and my colleagues that are serving the citizens of the district in Michigan, is to, pretty much everything else has been set on the back burner. It's been set aside. As you said, we've not met much in Lansing. We haven't had any of our regular processes. All sorts of legislation has been put on the sidelines for now. So that's really what this is akin to, but at an even greater level, to something that is even beyond the scope of a hurricane or a typhoon or a massive flood. It's well beyond that, and that's why it's consumed us for months now. And I think no one knows what the future holds, but it's going to consume a great deal of the attention and effort of everyone for months to come. We all want to get there sooner rather than later, and we all want to see our friends and have our kids go back to school and camps. But we've been helping a lot. And so, just happy to go into the details, but I'll just close that question by saying we've been helping people primarily. I mean, the biggest sort of reward that we've had is trying to help people with unemployment insurance issues. And we all know that that's been an overwhelmed system. It was never built to accommodate 1 million more people filing for unemployment benefits. And so we've been helping a lot in that regard. And it's been really rewarding when we've been able to help people get through that system and get the benefits they're due.
There is no question that the coronavirus has touched every segment of our lives. You just heard the senator talking about how his job has changed and how he is still trying to get unemployment benefits for some of his constituents. Another segment of our economy that has seen a lot of pressure is transportation, airlines slashing flights and trying to keep that supply line open. That's part of the job of the U.S. Transportation Department. This week, we talked with the secretary of that department, Elaine Chao, about what the department is doing to keep trucks rolling and keep planes flying. I want to begin with where we are from a transportation standpoint, because with this unusual situation, it's impacted everything from mass transit to air traffic to cargo traffic to trucks to trains. What is the department doing to help support all of those different facets as hopefully we start coming back into a reopening of the economy?
It has been a whole of government response. We basically have had $76 billion given to the Transportation Department. And our goal is to keep the national transportation system open, operational, and safe. To West Michigan in particular, we have given a great deal of financial assistance. For example, to the airports, we've given $16 million to Grand Rapids, $1 million to Muskegon, $10 million to Lansing, $141 million to Detroit. And in transit, we've given $9 million to Kalamazoo, $28 million to Grand Rapids. And let me also add, thanks to this investment, the Rapid postponed layoffs. Basically, it saved 300 jobs for 300 workers. And then, of course, we also gave $73 million for rural transit as well. So the president and the vice president are totally on the job, and we are very focused on ensuring that our transportation system remains open, that it's safe, and that the supply chain is moving as well. Because we take so much for granted, how the economy works and how, for example, our store shelves gets stocked is now of great fascination to so many of us because we're reliant upon it. So our job at the U.S. Department of Transportation is to keep the supply chain going, and we have new American heroes, and those are truckers. And the truckers are terrific. They're making sure that store shelves are supplied and that medical equipment and supplies get to where they need to be. So we're so grateful to all these heroes to keep our transportation system going.
Secretary, one of the big questions will be about the economic health of the airline industry, because obviously they have reduced flights by a remarkable number and far fewer people traveling because we're staying at home. As we begin to emerge from this, what kind of financial shape are they going to be in, do you believe? And what is the procedure and the protocol going to look like when we all start flying again?
Well, there's no question that the airlines are really hurting, but that can be addressed when we open up America. So 41 states have submitted plans on how they intend to reopen the economy, and 30 states are actually doing so. So we need to ensure that passengers feel safe when they get on these planes. And so we have been talking with airline industries about ramping up their cleaning protocol, sanitizing their planes to give an added comfort level to passengers. And in addition, overall, again, the president signed the CARES Act on March 27th of this year, which gave $50 billion to the airline industry, travel agents, ground crews that clean the planes, all with an aim toward ensuring that jobs are preserved in this sector, because the airline industry is so important for the jobs that it provides, and also for the essential service that it gives to the rest of us who have to travel.
And finally, Secretary, when you talk about these new heroes, these truck drivers, I hear from some of my local folks that are involved with logistics and transit that they're concerned because in our state, the Secretary of State's office, and in other states, the DMVs are closed down, and some of them need recertifications or new licenses, or people are trying to get CDLs. Is there any relief for that, and are we in danger of being short of truck drivers in the country?
Truck drivers are on the job, and we are doing everything we can to provide regulatory relief, common sense relief that will give them greater flexibility. So the things that are being discussed, renewal of driver's licenses, well, that can't happen because so many state DMVs are closed. So we are giving temporary waivers. For those whose driver's licenses are in danger of expiring, we have given a temporary waiver until June 30th. And that includes training of all kinds for transporting hazardous materials. Training has to occur every 3 years. Well, this is not obviously a good time for that to occur. So we have given temporary waivers. We've also given temporary waivers for people with learner's permits. And as they learn about this trade, they do not have to have a CDL holder sit next to them during this time. So these are all commonsensical regulatory relief actions that we have taken to give truck drivers greater flexibility in determining what they need to do their essential job to keep America moving.
So that's part of what the coverage of the coronavirus outbreak looked like this past week. In the coming week, expect more action out of Lansing and from the federal government as well. I'll be back with a final thought in just a moment. As we rapidly move towards month 3 of staying at home and dealing with the coronavirus, I'll leave you this morning saying stay safe, stay healthy, and stay with us every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock on Wood TV 8 for To The Point.